This is a short description of the aerobic composting process using the Marigold composters from Prudent Ecosystems. In an aerobic composting process, wet waste and a carbon-rich material like dried leaves or cocoa peat is blended with a bit of moisture. The mixture is constantly exposed to fresh air so that oxygen is available to the mixture. As a result of the reaction, there is heat produced, which encourages more microbes, and also CO2 is generated, which is an odorless gas. Lastly, rich black compost is produced. If the process is followed correctly, then there is no odor at any stage of the process. Let us first view the equipment used in a typical installation. Due to continuous upgrades, some of the equipment at your site may differ from what is shown. The main component of the system is a composter, and it is a common term used for a bioreactor. It is a vessel which is built to allow the controlled decomposition of organic matter. It has a double-walled stainless steel drum and has a perforated base and an aeration plate for ventilation. At the bottom is a tray to collect leachate, that is the liquid formed during composting. The hinged lid is a shape of a pyramid and is mainly transparent to let in sunlight. Lastly, there is a mild steel frame with a ring running all around, making it easier to grip while moving. The composter, as shown in the picture, is meant to be kept in the open and can withstand sun and rain. The frame will need to be painted once in a year or two. After the compost is harvested, that is removed from the composter, it needs to be left for maturation or curing. During this period, it can be kept in a low-cost container which allows air to pass through. A wooden curing box is built for this purpose. It has insect-proof mesh and it cannot be left out in the open and needs to be kept in a sheltered place. An electric shredder is essential when the wet waste generated is more than about 50 kgs per day. Shown here are three models which are in use. At the extreme left is a third-party shredder from MK Associates Bangalore. The other two are different models of the shredder from Prudent Ecosystems. These need to be sheltered from rain and need to be cleaned and lubricated periodically. Shredding by hand is feasible if the waste generated is less than 50 kgs per day. For this purpose, a pair of garden shears is used to chop down the waste into inch-size pieces. Shown above are the accessories used in composting. A 10-liter measuring can is used to measure the volume of wet waste and then an appropriate quantity of leaf powder or cocoa peat. A 10-liter quantity of wet waste is approximately 6.5 kgs in weight. This can has a mark showing how much cocoa peat is to be measured. A mixing tub is used to pour appropriate quantities of wet waste and leaf powder or cocoa peat and then blend them together by hand. In the case of hand shredding, the same tray is used. Lastly, a mixing rake is used to turn the contents of the composter during the daily aeration. Let us next view the personal safety gear used by the operators. The operators should wear face mask, gloves, and preferably safety glasses. Other optional items are an apron, a cap, and boots. Some of these are dependent on the comfort of the operators and the actual environment. Hand sanitizers are good to have around in places where soap and water are not available. Marigold process uses simple and easily available consumables for the composting of wet waste. Cocoa peat, that is the powdered form of coconut husk, or powdered brown leaves are the only additives used in the Marigold composting process. While sawdust is also an alternative, we do not recommend this as very often harsh chemicals are used in preserving wood and these chemicals will be present in sawdust too. These harsh chemicals can prevent composting action and can give rise to foul smell. Leaf powder is the best option if available. Let us look at the process of composting now. Incoming wet waste needs to be checked for items like plastic or metal or other objects which cannot be composted. These have to be removed before going to the next step of shredding. Sometimes food waste can have a lot of liquid in it. It is necessary to drain off excess liquid into a wastewater stream, which is treated separately by an STP. Too much liquid in composting can be a problem, and hence this stage is important. After draining off the liquid, the wet waste is then put a little at a time into the shredder or chopped by hand. If the size of the particles in the waste are about an inch in size, then that should be good enough. There is no need to pulverize it into paste. Cocoa peat will now be mixed with the wet waste thoroughly so that it covers all surfaces of the wet waste. This blending by hand is important because it ensures that all parts of the wet waste are thoroughly coated with cocoa peat, and this gives the necessary carbon for the bacterial action. Mixing, a fork is used and the entire pile is turned upside down. So one section of the waste is taken and it is brought up on the other section till the bottom of the composter is made visible. It should come off clean, which means the mixing has taken place till the bottom. This process is repeated at different sections of the waste. Monitoring the temperature daily is the best way to check that composting is happening properly. If all is fine, the temperature should go above 50 degrees centigrade and even higher into the 60s as shown here. During this phase of high temperature, the plant pathogens are destroyed and the compost rapidly changes color to a deep black. If there is too much moisture and liquid is dripping, then the temperature will not climb high into the 50s and can even give off foul smell. Hence, the operator should check for any dripping liquid and add cocoa peat to absorb the moisture. On the other hand, if the moisture is too little, again composting will stop and water should be sprinkled. We can attain the high temperatures if there is the right amount of moisture as well as the right amount of cocoa peat. After some days, the temperature of the compost inside the composter would drop below 40 degrees centigrade. Then it is the right time for removal and to be transferred into a curing box or a jute bag for maturation. It has to be left in the curing box for about 20 days. If the process has been followed correctly, the color of the compost should be deep black. For a finer texture, the compost can be left longer in a damp condition in the curing box. The system capacity is selected for a customer location based on the waste generation. However, we can also calculate the daily feed rate in liters per day or kg per day for a given installation. The table here gives a few examples of how the feed rate is calculated. It is a bit conservative and can be exceeded by about 10%. To convert from liters to kilograms, we take two-thirds of the volume in liters. If you feed less waste into the system, then it will take more than 12 days to fill up all the composters. In general, it is safer to have slightly more capacity than needed or equivalently feed waste at a slightly lower rate than calculated. What is the sequence of feeding the composters? Firstly, it is important to mark the composters with a serial number so that there is no confusion. Consider the first row in the table where there are 4 composters of 180 liters and that we are feeding the correct rate of 90 liters per day or about 60 kgs per day. On day 1, 2 and 3, the first composter is filled up and mixed daily. On day 4, 5 and 6, the second composter is filled up and mixed daily. Remember that the composter number 1 should also be mixed even though no fresh waste is being fed into it. Similarly, all 4 composters are filled up over 12 days. On day number 13, the first composter is emptied and it will be fed with waste for day 13, 14 and 15. Similarly, after 3 days, the next composter is emptied and this cycle is continued. Let us see how to use this compost. After the maturation period of 24 days, the compost can be mixed with an equal quantity of coco peat or leaf powder to form an excellent growing medium. Alternatively, it can also be mixed into the topsoil of garden beds. The design of the composter shown here has been registered with the Government of India Patent Office. Marigold Solar Composter is a registered trademark of Prudent Ecosystems Private Limited.